Our exploration into the man who was named the King of Cocaine begins on December 1st, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria grew up from humble beginnings, but it wasn't something that stifled his ambitions. As a young man, he made his first real ventures into criminality, and by the 1970s, Pablo, alongside his cousin Gustavo Gaviria and a small group of men, had already gained some notoriety as smugglers, specializing in trafficking things like cigarettes, alcohol, electronics, and many more valuables. However, as you may already know, it wasn't the smuggling of televisions that made him the DEA's biggest target. The cartel began smuggling marijuana and were working their way up the ladder, but it wasn't until Pablo discovered cocaine that things started to take off, and quickly. As the cartel began to work their way into this booming market, they realized that old smuggling methods were no longer going to be efficient enough. The cartel was growing, and its key figures were men such as Escobar, his cousin Gustavo, the Ochoa brothers, Jose Rodriguez Gacha, and many more. But they needed a man who was capable of taking their operations to the next level. That man was Carlos Ladair, the man who introduced Escobar to the idea of using air fleets to smuggle his product. This is what changed the game for the cartel. The cocaine empire. The cocaine trade very quickly became the lifeblood of the Medellin Cartel. It became apparent very quickly that it was an opportunity that was very much there for the taking and had demand through the roof. The production side of the empire primarily took place in the Colombian jungles. Coca leaves would be transported from countries like Peru and Bolivia into Colombia, where the cartel could oversee operations in the jungles to manufacture the fateful powder. Why the jungle, you might ask? Well, the trees covered the site of the labs, and while the labs didn't exactly smell very good, Carlos Ladair quickly took over the smuggling side, coordinating his fleets of planes through the Bahamas, and eventually smuggling the product through to the consumer capital of the world, the United States of America, and Pablo's main territory, Miami. Miami was quickly becoming known as a hotspot for partying, clubbing, and proved the perfect spot to set up shop. The cartel was armed with sicarios, hitmen who would stop at no cost to meet Escobar's demands. They were the enforcers of the cartel and were there to make sure that everything went smoothly. The sicarios were on hand to solve any issues. Production costs were very low on the produce, with each kilogram estimated at around $1,000 to produce. Sounds like a lot, right? Well, it's sold for $50,000 per kilogram in the US. That's a 50 times return on investment. But how much did they really sell? Well, at the cartel's peak, it was estimated that they smuggled 15 tons of cocaine into the United States per day, amounting to around $60 million per day and around $22 billion per year. To sum it up, they spend around $2,500 per month on rubber bands just to hold their money together, and at their peak were responsible for a staggering 80% of cocaine trade across the entire world. 80%. The President of Colombia. With the cartel bringing in unfathomable amounts of money, Pablo had his sights set even higher, a goal that he had set long before the rise of the cartel. He wanted to be the president of Colombia, and he used what he had to his advantage. Escobar proclaimed himself as El Paisa Robin Hood due to his generosity to the underprivileged Colombians. Pablo would build communities and give out money to the people, and it worked. People were getting behind him, especially in his home region of Medellin, and truly saw him as the Robin Hood of the working class. How did people not know that his wealth was amassed by a worldwide cocaine empire? Well, they did, but it was very hard to find any evidence, especially with Escobar's genius taxi company that served as one of the fronts for all his wealth, making it the world's most profitable taxi company. But people in the House of Representatives were looking hard and found their big break. A mugshot that proved Pablo's guilt, a mugshot that is very well known to this day and was shown in front of the whole House of Representatives with Pablo in attendance. A moment that stopped the presidential ideas in their tracks. Pablo was furious, and on August 18, 1989, Colombian President Luis Carlos Galán was assassinated by sicarios, and everyone knew who was responsible. All eyes were turned to Escobar and the Medellin Cartel, and it was the beginning of an escalation of violence by Escobar, with bombings, assassinations, and the fatal bombing of Avianca Flight 203, a failed assassination attempt on leading presidential candidate Cesar Gaviria. This made Pablo public enemy number one. La Catedral and the Great Escape. As Escobar's reign of violence continued throughout the country, the government felt forced to take action, and since they couldn't catch him, they instead brokered an agreement with him for a decreased sentence with no threat of extradition to the States, something which Pablo feared above all. The result of this deal was La Catedral, a prison designed by Escobar himself. It was like a mansion of mansions. However, La Catedral really sent a bad message to the Colombian people about the power Escobar held over the government, with him being essentially granted free rein to run his operations from a prison he designed himself, while surrounded by his own men and police not being allowed within 12 miles of the prison itself. On July 22, 1992, the Colombian forces surrounded La Catedral, and after some negotiations went wrong, the Colombian forces commenced a raid upon La Catedral in an attempt to capture Escobar. Escobar made an escape through a hidden part of the prison and made his way through the mountains and away from the Colombian forces. He encountered a small group of officers who let him pass through for fear of arresting him. It was a night that humiliated the government and sent shockwaves throughout the country. The manhunt. Escobar's escape ignited a fire within the Colombian and U.S. authorities. The manhunt was reaching its highest levels as multiple forces formed together in their pursuit. These forces being the DEA, the Colombian National Police, and a vigilante death squad known as Los Pepes. The DEA, under direct leadership from agents Steve Murphy and Javier Peña, were instrumental in providing intelligence and resources to the Colombian authorities. They were knee-deep in the commitment to taking down Escobar. The Colombian National Police, led by Colonel Hugo Martinez, played a vital role in the manhunt. Martinez, known for his unwavering desire to catch Escobar, was the leader of a specialized search block that was tasked solely on tracking down Escobar. But the biggest and most pressing threat to life for Escobar was Los Pepes, a death squad that was set up by victims of Escobar in order to hunt and kill him and anyone who worked for him. The group's main forces were the Cali Cartel, the main rival to Pablo's Medellin Cartel, who wanted him taken out for many reasons. Next came former associate of Pablo's, Don Berna, and to really add to it, the Castaño brothers, a group of paramilitaries who wanted Escobar dead for his involvement with communist group M19 in the past. The fall of a kingpin. As the walls began to close in on Pablo Escobar, he resorted to desperate measures in an attempt to evade authorities and Los Pepes. Going completely off-grid and living in rural parts of the country, cutting telephone contact with his family. But he was constantly on the run, having to move through safe houses, and it all came to an end on December 2nd, 1993, just one day after his birthday, when the Colombian authorities tracked Escobar to a safe house in Medellin. Surrounded by law enforcement, he found himself cornered. Rather than surrendering and facing his biggest fear, which was extradition to the United States, he began to make a run for it alongside one of his trusted sicarios. Escobar was chased to a rooftop where he was chased down and eventually shot down. This end to life seemed like a breath of fresh air for all parties involved, but the lasting impacts of Escobar were that of breeding new hope into cartels, and it only led to intensify the everlasting war on drugs. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the rise and fall of Pablo Escobar. If you enjoyed the video, we recommend you watch the Netflix show Narcos, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also comment down below to let us know you subscribed, and we'll respond to you as soon as possible. We will see you next time.